Hello everybody, my name is Ben, and probably some of you guys have known me as Ben the artist, but that's only actually the half of the story because I'm also Ben the interpreter and translator. So in this short video I want to just talk about some of my personal experience on being a good interpreter and translator. As myself, I've been an interpreter and translator in Chinese and English for quite a few years now. Some of my experiences including translating for the subtitle of a reality TV show, a subtitle for that, and also I've been on the high seas of Northern Pacific providing linguist support for U.S. Coast Guards who were working with the Chinese official from the fishery law enforcement. We were navigating on the high seas of Northern Pacific from Japan to Alaska for over a month and a half on the high seas, intercepting illegal fishing boats. So that was a really cool experience as well. And besides that, I'm also a certified interpreter by the U.S. Department of Justice to provide interpretation services for the Immigration Court involving in the proceedings of those who are under deportation procedures. And also I'm involved mostly with lawyers, just for out-of-court settlement, depositions, or examination before trials, that type of proceedings, mostly involving civic dispute. So in this respect, I just want to talk about a few things that how can one become a competent, good interpreter and translator. So there are three issues I want to emphasize on. The first is premise, the second is techniques, and the third is experiences. So I want to get just briefly in touch with each of these. The premise is also very important because in the United States it is almost impossible to find any universities or colleges that provide a major called interpretations or translations. And they say that in Hong Kong you might find one, but it is almost impossible. I've never heard of any of those. I personally came from fine arts. I'm an artist myself. So the premise has to be that one has to obtain a innate sense of affection and love of two languages, whatever it is. That because how I grew up is from an artistic background, that I've loved the Western cultures ever since I came here. I read extensively on, say, Shakespeare, Charles Dickens, Homer's, and all types of material related mostly to arts, but also just newspapers, world events and history, all kinds of stuff. But on the other hand, I'm also very fond of Chinese classics, especially Chinese classic poetry, classic literatures, and also a lot of contemporary Chinese art. So I was very attentive to Chinese contemporary art as well. So I read English and Chinese all the time. So I think the premise of that is anyone who's aspired to become an interpreter translator has to be immersed in this bilingual environment all the time as basically just a lifestyle. You have to love the languages. You don't have to be a linguist. As a matter of fact, I don't think any linguists are professional interpreter or translator. But to be professional interpreter or translator, you don't have to come from that being a certified or major in interpretation in any way, but you have to have a fundamental affection of these different languages. And for me, that's just how I am. And the second that we talk about is techniques. Of course, techniques comes with trainings. And how you really develop that, I realize it's also basically just a lifestyle. If you immerse yourself in different languages, and you basically, your brain's operating as if a left hand or right hand mode, and you basically just wanted to become competent and confident And how do you do that is just basically whatever you reach, whatever you do, however you, whoever you speak, you almost have to develop this this unconscious language processing of taking one language and convert it to another. But I'm not saying you have to be robotic as a electronic language processor. As of today, there's no electronic language processor. That's why they still have to hire human interpreter. I believe in the future it still has to be so, because consider all the cultural, social differences where people coming from, having different accents, all that. I don't think any robot is so intelligent enough to process all of those. So whoever the interpreter is, he or she has to be well versed in that designated language, as well as the person who spoke the language, the person's culture, the person's social backgrounds, and that is just basically a given, however the situation it is. And finally, it's just about experiences. Experiences that comes with just accumulating your jobs, and as long as you're doing more and more of those jobs, and as my favorite Brits, one of my favorite Brits, Bear Grylls, always says about so much about survival is really about improvising and adapting. And I believe I should add one more thing on this, is innovating, because everybody has their own way of managing certain things and operating certain things in their own discipline, in their own professional methodologies. So even though Bear Grylls is talking about survival situations, well, in the same situation that as in an interpretation environment, one also has to be very versatile in how do you manipulating all of these different situations. And sometimes you might come across with different type of situation that you really have to be very fast on. How do you improvising on certain things? How do you adapt into that new linguistic environment? And how do you ultimately become innovative in the way you deal with this new situation? For example, when I was working with the U.S. Coast Guards, all we are treating were these very professional jargons on navigation and maritime jargons, basically. So in the beginning, it's always hard. But as I start to, as day by day start to accumulate it, and I start to be well versed in their vocabularies about, say, navigation speeds, longitude, latitudes, and navigation, how many knots, and that type of stuff, the genius about human beings that you're always very easy to get adapted into a new environment. That same thing goes for a linguistic environment. So for me right now, I'm pretty well versed in these legal terms, in terms of these civic disputes, which is largely involved with injuries, and also immigration proceedings that's largely involved with political asylums. And basically they all talk about similar things. So it is actually not that hard. Not that hard as one might first be apprehensive about. But as long as you emerge in it, it's like learning anything. It's like learning swimming, or learning driving, or learning ride a bicycle. When you're outside the threshold, you always feel apprehensive about the unknown. But once you step in, after you step a few steps, then you really got a grip of it. So as of right now, I never actually touch into a field of, say, finance or marketing, that area. So for me, as of right now, that might be galaxies away. But once you take that challenge and once you dive into it, you start to accumulate a few frequent used vocabularies, and you go along the ride, and for a while, you're actually okay. You're right along the tide. So for me, being interpreter and translator is also a very exciting job. That just sort of like adds into my personal artistic experiences, as I'm always been very fond of languages, English, Chinese. That's actually two of my favorite languages. But I'm in fun of all languages. I have a very extensive interest in all type of fields. As some of you probably know, also in evolution and paleontology, but that's only just a side. So I just want to share some of my thoughts to you with regard to being an interpreter and translator. It's a lot of fun, and you got to have an extensive stomach to be inquisitive and attentive to everything all the time. Develop it as a lifestyle. That is very important. And being a bilingual is a lot of fun. And being someone like that in that situation is also someone deserving respect. So that is quite a decent profession. So that's my thoughts. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys later. Bye.